Kansas State at Kansas. Kansas State comes in as an 8-point favorite. 56.5 on the over-under is set for this one. Welcome in, Kansas State and Kansas fans. We just talked to a bunch of Kansas State fans, a couple weeks ago whenever they played Texas and played a real close game. And it seems like Kansas State is a team that is trending in the right direction. Kansas, on the other hand, came off of a loss last week that was pretty unpredictable, but did not have Jason Bean in that game. He gets hurt in the game and really was, I think, the nail in the coffin for Kansas in that one. So this game is interesting to me, and I think this line is very interesting as well. I think it's kind of a large line for a rivalry game like this, but the more I go into the stats and everything, it seems to make more sense to me. Look, offensively, both of these teams are pretty good. I mean, in yards per game, Kansas State is ranked 20th. Yards per game, Kansas is ranked 39th, 425. I mean, not bad offenses, but Kansas has got a pretty bad defense again, man. As the year has wore on, those numbers have just inflated and inflated, it seems like, as the year has went on. Averaging giving up 160 yards per game rushing. Okay, that's an average, so you can imagine what the extremes were. That's good for 90th in the country out of 133 teams. That's pretty poor. 225 yards per game passing. That's 62nd, also not great. They do have 25 sacks on the year, so they have been able to create some havoc. I think kind of like what we had talked about in our Oregon State breakdown earlier, and if you haven't checked that out, go check the Oregon State and Washington breakdown from this week. But I think this defense kind of feeds off of blitzing and trying to get to that quarterback and alleviate some of that pressure on that secondary. Offensively, they run the ball very well. 199 yards per game. That's good for 18th in the country. We know Jason Bean is a very good runner. He's going to be back for this one, right, Mason?
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
he'll be back.
That's what I was thinking. I just want to make sure something hadn't changed. We know how college football news can be. Couple times this year, we've bet on Kansas games. At game time, we figure out the starter's not starting. I mean, there's nothing worse than placing your bet and then the quarterback ain't coming out of the tunnel with the team. Look, I think both teams are going to try to run the ball here. Kansas State's rush defense is not bad though. 33rd at 119 yards per game allowed. And really where you make your money with Kansas State against this Kansas State defense is in the air. They average giving up 237 yards per game through the air, which is good for 87th. Not great at getting after the quarterback. 22 sacks on the year. This defense has 59th. Like I said earlier, that's not the end all be all. Havoc rate doesn't necessarily mean that you've got to sack the quarterback every time, but I think Kansas State has a clear edge here in the fact that I think they're going to be able to run the ball on this porous Kansas defense, man. And I'm a little bit concerned about the matchup of Kansas being able to run the ball on Kansas State's defense. I think that's kind of running into the strength of this Kansas State defense there because we know their problems have been in the secondary. So is Kansas going to be able to exploit the issues that Kansas State has had in that secondary? I don't think so. I'm not thinking so. I'm not feeling it. I think the Kansas State run defense matches up well against the strength of Kansas, which is running the ball. And I think Kansas State should be able to pretty much do whatever on offense. So give me K-State -8. I lean under. I think there's going to be a lot of running in this game for obvious reasons. But give me K-State and the -8. What say you on this one?
I like it. I think I'm on the same side of this one as you.
Well, it makes me feel better.
Yeah. I wish I could fight you on this, but I think it's a good pick. For once, I think you're right, Mark. You know, all right. So Kansas State is coming off of a bounce back win over Baylor. They put up almost 60 points in that game, which is, I don't care who you're playing, like that's pretty awesome offensively. They're playing some really good football right now, and it shows. Four out of their last five matchups they've won, and they've done that by an average score of about 45-12. Um, the only loss, those are all conference games, by the way. The only loss in that time was the 3-point loss to Texas in overtime that we all watched, right? And I think people forget they could have won that game had their kicker not missed a 27-yard field goal, which like
Mhm.
that kicker will never miss a field goal that short again in his life, right? Knock on wood for you Wildcat fans out there. But he's never going to miss a kick that short again, and they would have won the game by 3 points if he makes the freaking field goal. It still kind of upsets me. I was on Kansas State that week, if you can't tell. So I kind of needed him to get that field goal in. I had them on the money line. So it is what it is. All right. Now the Wildcats are favored on the road by 8 whole points against a really good Kansas team. And I think it's justified. And I mean really good by Kansas's standards, right? I don't mean really good like they should be in the freaking playoffs, but by their own standards, they're really good. And they're fun to watch under Lance Leipold. Kansas State's offense also ranks top 20 in most major categories. And I think that their defense has really kind of shored up. They lost a lot to the draft last season. I think they had a couple of first rounders. I know at least one on the defensive line, but I think they had two first rounders that they lost. And, they kind of had to adjust, it seemed like, early in the year. And now they're rounding into form on defense and they're playing some of their best ball. And I think now their defense is like a real strength for them on this team. I don't think that that's where you look at them and say, oh, they've got holes. I think they're playing some really good football right now on that side of the ball. As for Kansas has been playing some pretty good football. They're on Jason Bean, and I was on them last week. They lost a heartbreaking loss to Texas Tech. They lost 13-16. But Jason Bean went out in the first quarter of that game, and I think that had he not gone out, I think most people would say that they probably would have won that game. Offensively, though, most of Kansas's success has come on the ground, which really plays into one of Kansas State's strengths. They haven't been great at passing the ball, even with Bean playing, even with Daniels playing. They haven't been that great at passing the football. But I feel like they are going to have to beat Kansas State over the top to have a chance to win this one. That and maybe have some turnover luck as well. And I don't think, first of all, we can't bet on turnover luck. I'm not going to predict turnover luck. But I can say that I don't think that they have what it takes to beat Kansas State over the top. I don't think that they have the quarterback that can do it and the receivers that can do it. And I think that if they don't establish the run, it's going to be a long day for them. And I don't think that they're going to be able to establish that run. So I'm not going to overthink this one too much. I feel like Kansas State has been playing some really good football. I think they win and cover, especially if Bean happens to not play. He's listed as probable right now. I think he's playing, but just in case he goes out, I like Kansas State to cover. So my score prediction on this is the Wildcats 37 and the Jayhawks 24. That would be a Kansas State cover, and the over would actually hit in that circumstance. So I'd beware on that at least a little bit, because Kansas State, I think could really just shut down Kansas. So I'm a little bit apprehensive on the over under, especially if you're leaning under on that mark. But I like Kansas State in the points. Give me all those points, and I like them by 10 this week. Honestly, if it crept up to 9.5, or if you want to play it at 9.5, get more money for your bet, then I like it there too. So, but yeah, I'm with you, Mark. Give me Kansas State to cover.
Yeah, I'm interested to watch this quarterback situation as well. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, the kind of the emerging quarterback situation that we've seen at Kansas State, and I like the way that Kansas State has worked Avery Johnson into the system, but Avery Johnson is, I guess, really the quarterback of the future.
Yeah.
Um, 301 passing yards on the year, 290 rushing, 9 total touchdowns. So, I mean, 9 touchdowns, I mean, that's a pretty good bit. Um, so, obviously, he complements Will Howard, who's had 63.6 percent completion this year, 2,190 yards, responsible for 29 touchdowns. So very, very productive at the quarterback position this year for Kansas State. And I fell in love with this offensive line last year, and a lot of those guys came back again this year. Really like their ability to be able to protect. Um, I think Trayshawn Ward has a big game here, but Brooks and Sanat are all weapons for them. And I think DJ Giddens, though, is going to be the straw that stirs the drink. He's got 859 yards this year and averaging 6 yards per carry for the Wildcats. So I think that is somebody who's definitely going to have an impact on the game, and I think a very big impact on the game. But I'm with you on that one, Mason. Let's jump on the Kansas State -8 and ride that thing this Saturday. And all you Kansas State and Kansas fans, like the video and subscribe. Come hang out with us. We'd love to have you.